Judge, just real briefly, we have filed.
No such thing as breaking the
Okay. I just wanted to bring this to the court's attention for the jury who comes in, and it really doesn't need to be taken up until Dr. Parnell is here and present, but we had filed a motion in limine to exclude some of her testimony, or at least to conduct an out-of-court jury hearing as it relates to some of the physical appearances and her representations, but we can take that up with Dr. Parnell.
Okay, we will. I'll be glad to do so. How many interns in here today? Raise your hand. Oh, good God. Does any judge have anybody working for them? Well, we're all in a session. Well, it's judicial conference week, so we're really, most courts are not in session. Please be seated. Hey, how was lunch today? Well, that it was. I kind of figured you would say that. I had to ask anyway. All right, we're ready to get started.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, gentleman is Brandon Vandenburg. Brandon Vandenburg is not guilty. In June of 2013, Brandon Vandenburg was 19 years old. He grew up in a small desert town in California. Played football for a little while at the University of San Diego and then came back to Indio, California to play for a junior college there. And from that junior college, he was recruited by many major college programs. And in early 2013, a 19-year-old Brandon Vandenburg came on a recruiting trip to Vanderbilt. And on that recruiting later after that recruiting trip, He chose to come to Vanderbilt University. He could have had his choice of any number of schools to attend. But he wanted to come to Vanderbilt because of the academics, and because it's an SEC school, I guess, and because it's a Division I school. And it's in the big city of Nashville. But Brandon Vandenburg didn't know that even though he was 6'6" tall, that he was getting in over his head. Mr. Vandenburg came to Nashville, enrolled, well, I don't even think he was enrolled, but he came to Nashville. He was assigned 2 mentors. Austin Carter Samuels, who at that time was the star quarterback of Vanderbilt, the senior quarterback, and Chris Boyd, who was a starting wide receiver. And these were the two men assigned, as I said, as his mentors, who were supposed to show him the way things are done on the Vanderbilt football team. And they did show him the way things are done on the Vanderbilt football team. They showed him, we drink a lot. We party a lot. We go to the Tin Roof where a lady named Angie Gentry buys us hundreds of dollars worth of drinks at a time during the night. And even if you're underage, don't worry about it. You'll be able to get drinks and drink there also. And during this 2-week period after he first got to Vanderbilt, Mr. Dating relationship. They dated several times. And on June 22nd of 2013, it was probably a day pretty much like today, sunny and warm. Okay, sunny and hot. And Austin Carter Samuels and Chris Boyd, along with some other football players and a couple of the girlfriends, along with Mr. Vandenburg, made a trip to the lake. And on the way to that trip, on the way to the lake, they drank. While they were at the lake, they drank. And on the way home, they drank. They were drinking vodka, they were drinking tequila, and who knows what else. And nobody is saying that they held Mr. Vandenburg down and poured liquor down his throat. He drank it on his own. But again, you've got to remember, he's 2,000 miles away from home. And the only people he knows basically are his mentors. The men who are supposed to teach him the way things are done at Vanderbilt, the Vanderbilt football team. And after drinking since 11 o'clock that morning, they finally returned back to Nashville, probably around 6 or 7, something like that. And then they go to another party where there's more drinking. And then after they drink for a while at that party, they go, a couple of different groups get cabs and they go to the Tin Roof. Mr. Vandenburg's with them. Now, you folks aren't from Nashville, so I don't know if you know what the Tin Roof is, but the Tin Roof is a bar that's on Bandenburg Street. And if you're from Memphis and you saw the word Bandenburg, you would have no idea how to pronounce it. But it's a bar on Bandenburg Street that is very popular with Vanderbilt athletes. As I said, there's a lady named Angie that buys them drinks by the hundreds of dollars. And she was there that night. And Mr. Vandenburg was there. what they call pre-gaming, or drinking before you go out to drink. The house, and she told you hear that she called a shot of 3 ounces of gin. And she and Mr. Vandenburg had talked earlier in the week, or at least texted each other, and they hadn't made any formal plans to meet at the tin roof. It was kind of like, hey, I may be there, hey, you may be there, maybe we'll get together. It's called taking a lap. You walk around in the bar to see who's there, to see if any of your friends are there. I think he was there talking with one of her friends. And they began drinking together. Angie was there. And Angie was buying rounds of shots. She would buy 10, 15, 20 shots at a time. And there was a man there named Tom who was with Angie. Angie bought and drank it down. And then there were a couple of other occasions. Mr. Vandenburg bought her a Red Bull and vodka. I've never had one of those, but I would imagine caffeine and vodka is a pretty potent mixture. But they drink there for a while, and they both become intoxicated. They can't get into her apartment, either because they were at the wrong apartment or because intoxicated and unable to take care of herself. Mr. Vandenburg wants to take her back to his room so she will have a place safe to sleep. We know that they did go to her apartment complex because her shoes were found on the lawn the next day. When they get to Gillette, and Mr. Vandenburg, rather than try to carry her from her apartment to the villages at Van Dien, it's not a great distance, but it's probably farther than you want to carry someone. And drives her over to Gillette Hall. And you'll see when he gets there, he parks somewhere where he's not supposed to. He parks in a fire lane. And in his intoxicated state, doesn't even notice that there's a police car parked about 30 yards away. And he gets out of the car. Now, Gillette Hall, one thing you've got to understand about Gillette Hall is it's a dorm at Vanderbilt, and they have security there. They have a card system. To get in, to open the doors, you have to swipe a card. To take the elevator to an upper floor, you have to swipe a card. To get into the hallway after you get out of the elevator on your floor, you have to swipe a card. card, so he knows he needs some help. And he sees a fella that he recognizes as a football player because he's seen him at the football complex before. But he did not know this fella's name. But he goes up to him and asks him for help. And they're talking about what they're going to do and then how he's, he can't carry and swipe and all that. And while they're talking, Cory Batey and Brandon Banks also come up. And what you'll learn about these three is that they're like brothers. They know each other. Mr. McKenzie, that's the way he characterized it. Mr. Banks, at least, he said he's like my brother. They knew each other very well. But none of these three had ever said a word to Mr. Vandenburg. Mr. Vandenburg had never talked to them before. He did not know them. They did not know him. And he asked for their help. And they agreed to help. They were going to help themselves. And you will see on the surveillance videos, you will see Mr. Vandenburg. And you will also see him carry her to the elevator and takes her into the elevator, lays her on the floor. Mr. Banks is in the elevator with him, and you can see Cory Batey step into the elevator, and you can see Mr. Vandenburg saying, no, we'll go up. You can see him pushing out. And after the elevator door closes, you'll see Cory Batey and Brandon Banks whooping it up, laughing, shaking their heads, smiling, because they know what they're planning to do. Mr. Vandenberg's not there when they're planning to do it. And you're going to see some things. You're going to see Mr. Vandenburg do some things that he shouldn't have done. And one of the first things you're going to see is when they get out of the as Detective Mayo characterized it in one of his questionings. He says, you were laughing at the drunk girl. That's understandable. And if any of you remember, Foster Brooks used to be on television, and that was he was a comedian, and that was his shtick. He would act like he was drunk, and people would laugh. And Mr. Vandenburg, he was drunk and he was laughing. And he takes his camera out and he starts. It's not something he should have done. Would he have done it had he been in his right mind? We don't know. But you'll also see Brandon Banks take his phone out and begin taking photographs also. At this point in time on the second floor, it's only Mr. Banks and Mr. Vandenburg. But shortly after Mr. Vandenburg, then you see Banks and you see Batey and McKenzie come out of the elevator and follow them down the hall. And this is when they end up in Mr. Vandenburg's room. And Mr. McKenzie says in one of his statements that he and Mr. Banks and Mr. Batey had all been drinking, excuse me, but that he and Mr. Banks were not on the same level, as he put it, as Mr. Batey and Mr. Vandenburg. And he said that those two didn't know what they were doing. And Mr. McKenzie says that when they first got into the room, they sat around and had small talk. Talked about how Mr. Vandenburg came to Vanderbilt. And while they're doing the small talk, as he puts it, Mr. Batey starts acknowledging the young lady laying on the floor. And Mr. Batey begins touching her breasts, touching her vaginal area, and Mr. Batey begins taking her underwear off. And then everything else ensues from that. Now, Mr. Thurman says that Mr. McKenzie is going to tell you that Brandon Vandenburg, when he first got into the room, says, oh, but you're going to be hearing that. And he says that Mr. Vandenburg slapped her on the butt. And he says Mr. Vandenburg handed out condoms. Well, this was in a statement that Mr. McKenzie made over a year after this incident happened. This was in July of 2014 he made these statements. In July of 2013, Mr. McKenzie says that Brandon Vandenburg didn't have anything to do with the sexual assaults. In 2013, he says that Cory Batey was the only one who slapped her on the butt. And it's significant that he says this about Mr. Vandenburg in this June statement, in the 2013 statement, because he's already told Mr. Banks and Mr. Batey, his guys that were like brothers to him, he's already told about everything they did. So why would he not tell everything that Mr. Vandenburg did at that point? And what is the difference between 2013, where Mr. Vandenburg didn't have anything to do with anything, and there were no condoms, in 2014? Well, Mr. McKenzie and his lawyer found out that forensic analysis had revealed that Mr. McKenzie's fingerprints were on a condom box in Mr. Vandenburg's room. Mr. Banks' fingerprints were on that condom box. Now, Mr. McKenzie has that condom box in his hands, and he's been shown to be a liar about what he did. So now he's got to put that condom box, he's got to take that condom box out of his hand, he's got to put that condom box in Mr. Vandenburg's hand, because he's in a deep, deep trouble, Mr. McKenzie. So those are the kinds of things that you're going to have to listen for in this trial. You're going to have to listen to what these witnesses say. You're going to have to listen to what these witnesses have said. And nobody Mr. Vandenburg maybe could have stopped it. But the state is asking you to find Mr. Vandenburg criminally responsible for the actions of people he didn't know minutes before all this happened. He didn't know that he had gotten in over his head. And he didn't know that that's the way these guys did things at Vanderbilt. Now, these videos and these pictures you're going to see are terrible. They're horrible. It disturbed me when I saw them. And I've been practicing law for 32 years. But that's what we're asking you to do, is to follow your oaths as jurors and to consider all the evidence. And when you see these videos, don't close your minds totally. And the judge will instruct you to not make up your minds until you've heard all the proof, and don't even deliberate about the case till you've heard all the proof. We want you to hear all the proof. And once you have heard all the proof and considered all the proof, then you're going to see that Brendan Vandenburg is not guilty. Thank you.